Hey, Joe DiSanto here. I have another installment in my kind of Quicken tutorial series. So this video is going to be an introduction to reporting in Quicken. The reporting is kind of like the meat of what we're getting out of all this work. We enter in all this data so that we can get a report, that summarizes our information, and we can use that information to make good decisions going forward. So the reporting's very crucial. It can be kind of deep though, so this is an introduction to like the most basic report. Talks about how the way you set up your categories affects your report. Talks a little bit about other ways to customize the reports using category groups, and is a good overall primer. So hopefully it's helpful. I'll see you in the video. Thanks. I'm Joe DiSanto, by the way. I'm an independent CFO and business consultant. I actually spent most of my career in Los Angeles building a few multi-million-dollar businesses, and I've since semi-retired, and now I help other businesses and individuals manage their money and plan better for their future. So if you're interested in small business, personal finance, and real estate advice, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Hello again. Thank you for joining me on this Quicken tutorial odyssey that I am creating. This video, as I mentioned at the beginning there, is going to be like an introduction to reporting. So reporting ultimately is like, the end result of all the work, of putting in the data. And really the reporting is like what we're after. It's what gives us the valuable information from which we can make good decisions going forward. So, whether you're managing money for a business or your personal life, and I always say, you should treat your personal finances like a business. You aggregate all this information in some kind of accounting software, whether it be Quicken or QuickBooks or whatever, and then you look at the reporting and see the net result of your activities, and then hopefully make good decisions going forward. So Quicken, if you're looking at Quicken, you're most likely doing this for your personal finances. You might also have a business that you're going to be tracking here. I use Quicken Home and Business, so a lot of my videos, all my videos sort of mostly relate to that, though they can, all the info can sort of relate to the other versions of Quicken too, for the most part. But reporting is pretty deep. I mean, Quicken in general, as I've said many times, is kind of a deep program. It does a lot, and it gives you tons of options for reporting. And like, I probably use just a few. Ultimately, after 20 years using Quicken, there's really a couple of reports that I use regularly. So I'm going to kind of just give you an intro to like the basic ones. Or the most basic one in this video, which is the cash flow report under banking, and then kind of show you the ways, the different options for customizing that report and why you would customize it and stuff like that. So as I just mentioned, the cash flow report under banking is probably, is the most basic thing. And the labeling, again, is a bit misleading. Like I did this other video about the account bar and how things are labeled and how it's organized. And you should probably watch that if you haven't. And basically what I kind of summarize in there is that in Quicken Home and Business, you're looking at your personal finances, business finances, often real estate finances too. And for whatever reason, like when it's considered personal accounts, Quicken puts them under banking, investing, and business in this left bar. But if you, banking, investing, and property and debt. But if you have business accounts, you can, under the business heading, have banking, property and debt, and investing. Same under rental property, you can have banking, investing, property, and debt. Really, I think they should just have a bar called personal accounts, and under it have banking, investing, and property and debt. But they don't yet. They've been working on making this bar customizable, so maybe they'll allow you to do that. But so I say all that because this report is under the banking tab, but in a sense, it's probably more referring to like your personal accounts. Because as you can see, they have a whole category for rental property and business as well, and I'll talk about those in other videos. So for whatever that little bit of info is worth, there you go. I mean, to again, sort of, I guess, even further confuse the situation is, as I mentioned in that other video, the accounts ultimately are agnostic. The only thing that makes them personal business or real estate is you deciding to label them that way and put them in your organization that way. But I could make a business account that I could later put in personal if I wanted. So what I've done is I made my reporting so that it encompasses everything in one report, and inevitably I'll get to showing you how I do that. But to start out, the basic report you're going to pull is a cash flow report, and I should say, until you actually put a bunch of data into Quicken and track put your accounts in, download transactions, and categorize them, there would be nothing that would populate the report. So really, you're probably not going to get, into like having a good report until after about a month, a solid month of putting stuff in. So just heads up there. If I think that's obvious, but might as well say it. Okay, so the cash flow report, out of the gate, probably what's going to come up in terms of settings on the cash flow report is it's going to be a year-to-date report. And then it's going to have all of your accounts, all of your categories, everything turned on, okay? And that's akin to like how it would happen in like QuickBooks. QuickBooks, for example, like when you do a report, you can't choose which accounts you wanted to report from. You can't choose which categories you wanted to show. It will always only show everything. And so the default, I think, settings for Quicken is year-to-date in every account and every category. Now, that may be perfectly fine for you, but as you get into using Quicken and realize that, oh, wow, I can customize the way my reports look. I can have certain accounts turned on or off. I can have certain categories turned on or off. I can have certain tags turned on or off. You'll find that becomes very handy in helping deliver to you like the bits of information you want in the most easily digestible way. So I would say, you pull your first report, you kind of look at the info that it gives you in the way that it gives it to you, and from there you might start to say to yourself, hey, well, this is cool, but I wish that, I had like all my income from my business sort of grouped in one place, and all my income, from a real estate grouped in one place, and then, my expenses, I want them broken down and subtotaled so that I can sort of better understand them. And that is all possible in Quicken, much more so than a program like QuickBooks or FreshBooks or something like that, which is why I like it so much, and I think it's kind of like, very powerful. Now, the question is, how do you do that? So you achieve the style of delivery of your report two ways. You achieve it through customizing the report in this dialog box here. And I'll bring that back in a sec. But also, one of the primary ways you design your reporting is the way you design your categories. You're going to find that the way your reporting looks is directly correlated to the way you set up your categories in Quicken here. And if any of you, sidebar, if any of you watched my other videos and you've heard me mention that I have this course called the Financial Independence Roadmap, it's all about mostly planning for your future, but it involves a lot of topics about Quicken. In that course, I include, I should say, my Quicken template file, which has my category organization already built in. And what you'll find out is if you're starting from scratch is the default way the categories look here is very basic, and it's not in any hierarchy. It's all just like, in like this one list, which gets sorted alphabetically on your report. So you might pull your first report and go, wow, okay, I can see all the info. I can see where I spent money. I used the categories that Quicken sort of had by default. But it's not that easy to digest, as I like to say. It's like I got my business expense for shipping and postage here right next to my living expense of restaurants, right next to my car insurance and whatever. It's just alphabetical. And in order for me to like sum total what I spent on my car, I have to go in and like add lines together, with a calculator. And obviously, that takes extra time. And you're like, I'm using a program, so I probably don't have to, do that kind of extra level work. And the answer to that is you're correct. You should design it so that you can get information in a more easily digestible way, and you can. But what you have to do is, step one is start organizing your categories using main categories and then subcategories. And the cool thing about Quicken is you can do subcategories of subcategories. Okay, so I'm going to use this for example. Like I have my expenses set up in a certain way here and here, and I have higher level category is business expenses, and then subcategories of that are what they are, and then another example is living expenses. These are more like my personal life expenses. Well, I have a subcategory in there called car expenses, and then I have a subcategory in there of all the actual breakdown of expenses of my car, and then below that in my kind of hierarchy, I then have a second level subcategory, child expenses, and below that I have all the actual detailed expenses of that, or categories of that, then discretionary, general, and so on. That's how I've designed them here in the category list, and you'll see that's how they get reported here in the report. So I have living expenses with a subcategory of car, child, and then the further subcategories. I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to start customizing this report a little bit and go back to last year, which has a whole year's worth of data, and it's going to be, have more info. So that's kind of step one. If you start to look at your categories, how you have them organized, and that's going to affect how they show up in this report. Now, at the report level, you can make other adjustments though. They have some organizational options here of the report, so you can look at them both as an income and expense sort of review, and then they have a cash flow basis review, and then they have a category group review. Ultimately, and it's going to extend out into a few videos, we're going to end up using the category group. If you follow along with me and you want your stuff to look like my stuff, you have to use the category group view. But in order to make use of category group, you actually have to add category groups to all your categories. So I'll touch on a little bit of that at the end of this video, but really that's going to be a whole nother video. So that's one way you can adjust the way the report previews the information. I think currently I'm on income and expense. Let's see what cash flow looks like. So cash flow is inflows and outflows in terms of like kind of master group settings, and then income and expense is income and expense. Now, the truth be told, there's very little difference between those two viewings. Like this is called a cash flow report, but unlike, there's there's three basic business reports: cash flow, profit and loss, and balance sheet. In Quicken here, I think you're going to find that there's very little distinction between a cash flow report and a profit and loss report. So, and it's just, and the way those reports show, again, is sort of related to your categories. So you sort of design, whether it's a cash flow or a profit and loss report through your customization of the report versus like, it giving you this template that, I guess, does those two things very distinctly. So, and really you're going to find under the reports, under personal, they only have cash flow as an option, but pretty much cash flow and profit and loss report are kind of the same thing in Quicken. Under the business, you're going to find that they actually do have a cash flow report and a profit and loss statement. But you could, when you bring both of those up, you're going to find that they're very similar, and they're pretty much more dependent on how you set up your categories and if you're using category groups or whatever. So there's really, one report that shows you your income and expense on the whole. It's the cash flow report. And then if you want it to be more of a profit and loss kind of report, you can turn categories on and off to make that distinction. If you don't do business bookkeeping, you're probably not even going to know the difference between those two things, and frankly, it's not going to matter all that much to you. So the cash flow report is where we're going to start. We're going to look at our income and expenses in there. To give you a little, I guess, quick difference between what a profit and loss and a cash flow report would be is a profit and loss report in business is designed more to deliver your profitability in a period of time, regardless of whether or not you have received all the money you're counting as your income, because sometimes you bill people and you wait to get paid, and regardless of whether or not you've actually paid your vendors. You might have a bill, but you haven't actually sent the money out, right? Theoretically, that's called accrual accounting. You're accounting for everything you've billed and every bill you've received, whether you sent the money or not. That's part of a distinction of a profit and loss and a cash flow report. A cash flow report would be, this is money I've actually received, this is money I've actually spent, and what's the difference there? That might not actually represent my profitability, but it represents the money that's gone in, the money that's gone out, and the money I currently have in my bank account. The difference between a profit and loss statement and the cash flow statement isn't strictly related to whether it's an accrual or cash reporting statement either, but it's one of kind of the main, I guess, overall distinctions is P&L is about how much money have I earned and how much money have I committed to spending versus how much money have I received and how much money have I sent out. We're basically going to just customize a report that sort of delivers the information how it's important to you. And for the most part, with your personal accounting, you're not sending out invoices and you're not getting bills from vendors and they're sitting paid or unpaid. You're mostly just paying for everything as you spend money, and you get your check when you get your check. I think that was not exactly that clear, but maybe we'll have to do some more videos on P&L versus cash. But anyway, okay, so the report kind of starts out, with everything on and in this income and expense setup. Now, that might be perfectly fine for you, but like for me, I don't want to actually look at the information in that way. I want to look at the information in a sort of chain of events kind of way. So I set up my categories to have category groups. When you do that, you can further refine the way your reporting looks. So this is a report that is broken down or being previewed with category groups. So as you can see, the category groups sort of replace these larger gray headings and sorts the report to show all the categories that I've assigned to be under that heading. So for me, it's like I make money in the business, and then I spend some money in the business, and then I have a net left over from the business, and that's part of my income. And then I have investment income from investments, mostly that would be cash flow or dividends. But as you can see here, I've tracked appreciation in this, as a thing as well. But that's a good distinction between cash flow and non-cash flow. I feel like I made money on appreciation of some properties, but I don't have that money. So from a profit and loss point of view, I can think about appreciation as income, but from a cash flow point of view, I don't have that money in hand. So it's quite possible in business you can be profitable and cash flow negative at the same time, depending on what's happening in your business. Anyway, not to get too in the weeds on that, but going down the line, then I have some additional personal income, like for example, credit card cash back. Amazingly, I got that much cash back from credit cards, some gifts, whatever, and then keep going down the line. Got taxes in there. I don't pay a ton towards taxes throughout the year. I kind of pay most of it at the end of the year. And then we get down into personal expenses, and back to correlating between my categories over here. The way I have the categories organized in here in terms of category, subcategory, so on, that's what shows up here. But the fact that I have all these categories in a category group assigned, it sorts it under the category group. Again, when I am looking at the organization via category group. So go down through the end of personal, and then I have like kind of what I call special or other expenses, which are kind of like super discretionary, meaning like travel, super discretionary. I don't have to travel at all during the year, and I'd save a bunch of money. But last year I chose to travel a ton, and I spent $50,000. I keep those in their own area because I don't want to mix those in with my regular living expense total, because they are like super discretionary. So, and again, when I have all these categories and subcategories, I can see the total I spent on the car, but then I can see the total of the whole living expenses together, and then I can add, the total of the super discretionary on top of that, and then I can see the total personal expense. So I organize my categories in such a way so I can get that information, and then I put them in category groups so that I can get the information delivered in this sort of chain of events approach. And for me, that makes it the quickest for me to understand my finances. I guess I should say I have yet another category, which is real estate activity. Okay, and the real estate activity breaks down each property and the income and the expense and whatever for that. So that is like the overall of the overview of the most basic report, the cash flow, what I would call cash flow / P&L report in one. But you customize it for the way that works best for you. And in terms of understanding your finances and like, how much should I make, how much should I spend, how much should I save, like where am I at, that's the pretty much main report you're ever going to look at. And you might have a couple different like saved versions of that, depending. Like you could kind of make one that's a little bit more cash flowy, and then make one that's a little bit more profit and lossy. And to save a report over here, you pull a report, and then you're like, I like that. I made this. We're going to call this my P&LE report, Joe, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to save it in the main folder of saved reports is my saved reports. Now you can make subfolders of this area and put it in a subfolder, but I'm just going to put it in there right now, and then I'm going to show you where that, where you can access it. So now I have a saved report called P&LE report Joe, and when you save a report, it pops it up as a new one. Now, if I went in, just so you know, actually, let me show you where that is. So right in here, under reports, my saved reports, it shows up right there. I have a few other ones that I'm going to go over later. This is the example of you making a subfolder in there. So there's an example of a subfolder you can put in there, but all of those pretty much go in there. If you wanted to, like, edit or change the name or reorganize any of the reports in here, you would go to Reports and Graphs Center. This is Reports and Graphs Center, and you can basically, edit the name, delete. You can, make a new make a new subfolder in here if you wanted, if you didn't set it up originally, and make changes to the way your saved reports are. Okay. Now that you know where they're saved, so when you save a report, this is one of the options in preferences that I showed in that preferences video. You can have a saved report pop up as a new report, or you can have a saved report just basically replace the report you were on. I have a saved report pop up as a new report because sometimes it's like doing a save as versus a save, in like any computer program. I don't want to always replace the report I'm on. I might just want to be creating sort of a new variation. However, if I wanted to replace the report I'm on, I hit save and I don't change the file name, and it basically does a save and replace. So just FYI. Okay, so I don't want this video to be super long. So that's like basic intro to basic report, how categories correlate to reports, a little introduction to the category group thing. I'll do a video on assigning category groups and how that translates into a report, the category groups report more specifically. And then I'll do some other videos on more distinctions between creating a cash flow report and a P&L report and how you can, customize that. And just a little, lead into that, where we would start customizing for that is we would turn accounts on or off depending on what we, wanting to do. We might turn categories on and off depending on what we might want to do. We can start utilizing tags and turn them on and off for certain kind of reporting stuff. So there's a lot you can do with reporting depending on how you want it to look. It's definitely can't all be done in one video, so I'll just keep making reporting videos, but hopefully this, is a good primer. Okay, thank you so much. Catch you next time.